So in this video, I'm going to be talking about self-harm, the science behind self-harm and why I consider it an addiction and why a lot of doctors are actually also starting to consider it an addiction. A disclaimer, I am not a mental health professional. I've had no formal training in the mental health field. I haven't got any qualifications in mental health. I am talking from my experiences only. Also, another disclaimer would be if you're not feeling good enough or mentally in the right place to have a video talking about self-harm or trigger topics, then please don't watch this video. I will put time codes and hopefully it will add chapters because I'm thinking of splitting this video into two sections. So my self-harm and the science behind it, and then also the second half of this video will be about self-harm coping strategies. So if you would like to watch the coping strategies, then please fast forward to the time code or the chapter that will kind of do. If you go along the bar at the bottom, it should give you a section, and you should be able to get your mouse and roll over it, and it should give you a chapter, and you can skip forward to whatever chapter you feel is most appropriate for you. So for some people who've never self-harmed, the idea of self-harm being an addiction is quite hard to understand and quite hard to actually know why, because, without having the explanation behind it, they just kind of, see somebody's doing that to themselves. Why would they do that to themselves? And that is like a literal thinking. I have people in my family, I have people in my friend circle who don't understand it, who just don't. And that's okay because, as long as they kind of have some understanding and they're able to support me, that's all I can ask for. So when a self-harmer self-harms, the body releases a hormone called dopamine. Dopamine is otherwise known as the happiness hormone. And so therefore, you can probably start to understand why self-harm is possibly in some people's minds considered as an addiction. In my mind, it is considered an addiction because of the constant want for this hormone. And you make that connection between I'm feeling really distressed mentally, in my head, and you think, well, if I was to self-harm, that's going to make it better. And that is what the thinking of somebody who self-harms kind of is. So they think I self-harm and I feel better from it. And they don't always understand why they're feeling better. But the science behind it is that they feel better because their body releases the happiness hormone. And then they think, oh, I'm feeling better now I've self-harmed. And then they go back to it because they constantly want to feel better or some relief from their mental distress. So although this is probably a bit of a topic that everyone has different views on and stuff like that, my view is that self-harm is and can be an addiction. I saw it as an addiction when I was going through it, and I do see it as an addiction in people who do struggle with it. And that is pretty much the basic story behind why self-harm can be addictive to some people and why self-harm can be hard to even stop, because you want that happiness hormone, and it's like having the ability to sit with your emotions and not wanting that relief from dopamine. So I'm now going to move on to self-harm coping strategies. So for someone that self-harms, it can be quite hard to actually stop, and that is because the dopamine makes you happy. I am going to list a few of the common mental health coping strategies just in case any of those are going to help you. So the first one I'm going to talk about is ice. So ice is okay, and I never really kind of caught on to the whole thing about ice. Ice, basically, you take an ice cube and you rub it along wherever you want to self-harm. That is literally the whole the idea of it. The second coping mechanism I am going to talk about is the getting a hairband and flicking it against your wrist. So that was one that I always had shoved down my throat in a way, because they said to me, well, if you flick the hairband against your wrist, you're going to get a somewhat pain stimuli and a somewhat reaction from doing that. And I think, to be honest, yes, it does. It gives you a stimulus, but for me, it was never enough. So if I was kind of mildly anxious or mildly wanting to self-harm, then yes, it might have helped me, but to be honest, my emotions used to go from 0 to 100 within 30 seconds. So it never really helped at all. The third coping strategy I'm going to talk about is mindfulness. Now, mindfulness, again, there is various different types of mindfulness, Mindfulness is generally a coping strategy that works with the senses. So it can be anything from sucking your favorite sweet and having that in your mouth as a taste. It can be smelling your favorite candle, or it can be having like a lip balm and smelling that because you like a certain scent. I don't know. It can be visual, like colouring. It can be hearing, like audiobooks and music, and it can be touch. So for some people, having like the physical touch of a different stimuli can really help. And they are all mindfulness techniques. And the ones that I have found that are particularly good is adult colouring. So getting adult colouring. And for me, when I'm feeling really, really anxious, I don't want to do the adult colouring that's got like loads of little squares or it's got like, it's really hard to kind of do. So the book that I have, which I will leave a link in the description box below, is a book where it's got like it's an adult colour by numbers. So rather than you having to think about the colour you're putting in, you pretty much just look at the list at the left-hand side and the pictures on the right-hand side, and you just colour. Like, it is a really good book. I think the patterns are good for coping with like anxiety and just as a distraction, but it's good because you're colouring and you see the bright colours, and for me that definitely is something that has worked. So another type of mindfulness is listening. So listening to audiobooks, listening to sleep music, listening to anxiety podcasts, anything. I think mindfulness can be bashed quite a bit because it's thrown around too much, and I've always had like eat mindfully, and I think it's overused, to be honest, because like mindfulness can help. You just need to use the right type of mindfulness. So another coping strategy that I can think of for self-harm is more personal to you. So for some people, they have hobbies like they enjoy walking, or for some people it's crafts, or for some people it might be singing or drama or acting or don't know, like dancing, anything and that can actually be used as a coping strategy. And I always found that when I was wanting to self-harm, catching those feelings early rather than sitting with them and not knowing what to do is actually the best thing to do. So actually going ahead and being like, okay, I want to self-harm. It's a mild one at the moment. Let's do something to intervene before it gets any worse. And this is so individualized to lots of different people. Like for me, I really enjoy crafts and I enjoy baking and I enjoy sitting in the sun and sunbathing and things like that. Whereas other people might enjoy the exercise, or they might enjoy, I don't know, singing or anything like that. I mean, I do like singing as well, but I constantly, I'm changing up what I'm trying to do. So thinking of a distraction that is personal to you is probably one of the biggest things that's helped me to stop self-harming. So the last coping strategy I'm going to talk about is one that is probably a last resort and is something that has helped me, but doesn't help everyone. So for me, when I'm getting really bad, I try the distractions first, but I've had so much of anxiety and trying all these different things that I have medication as a backup. Medication is good, but medication that helps with anxiety and the impulsiveness is very addictive. So I'm going to give out a few names of some medication. So doctors usually won't prescribe them unless you've tried one and it has worked. For me, I had this medication prescribed to me when I was in the mental health inpatient ward, and it really did help. So that's why they decided to give me small prescriptions of medication that, to help control the intense emotions. So that is it for today's video. Thank you for watching, and I do really hope that some of these tips and the way I have explained everything has helped you to understand the science behind the self-harm if you watched the first part of this video, and also helped you to maybe think of some coping strategies if you watched the second part of this video.